She was ready to kill me, until my unmasked face awakened forbidden desire. The infiltration. The crystalline spires of the Azuri fortress glimmered in the pale light of 3 moons, their faceted surfaces refracting beams across the midnight landscape. Nix Harlow pressed his body against the cold metallic wall, his heartbeat echoing in his ears as he carefully disabled the security field with practiced precision. 6 months of training for this moment to infiltrate the most heavily guarded Azuri stronghold in the Cygnus Quadrant and retrieve the quantum encryption keys stolen from the human colony on Terra Nova. 20 minutes until patrol rotation, whispered the artificial intelligence in his earpiece. Maintain stealth protocol. Nix nodded silently, his dark tactical suit absorbing the ambient light as he slipped through the newly created gap in the security field. The air inside felt different, heavier, sweeter, filled with the faint scent of the mineral compounds the Azuri required for respiration. He moved through the shadows like water, years of reconnaissance missions guiding his steps. The central data vault lay 3 levels below. Nix accessed the maintenance shaft, descending silently into the heart of the fortress. His pulse quickened as he approached the violet-tinged force field protecting the vault. This was where things would get complicated. As he prepared to deploy the field disruptor, a soft hum of energy caught his attention. Too late, he realized his mistake. The patrol rotation had changed. Before he could retreat into the shadows, a figure materialized from around the corner. She moved with lethal grace, her purple skin luminescent in the low light, golden eyes narrowed with predatory focus. Commander Lyra Vex, the notorious leader of the Azuri Special Forces whose name was whispered with fear among human scouts. Her silver uniform clung to her athletic frame as she raised her pulse weapon, aiming directly at his chest. "Human," she said, her voice melodic despite the coldness of her tone. "Your kind always underestimates our adaptability." Nix froze, calculating his odds. The disruptor in his hand would take 7 seconds to activate. Too long. His gaze locked with hers, searching for mercy where he knew none existed. "Commander Vex," he said, surprising her with knowledge of her identity. "I expected better security for technology you stole from us." Her lips curved slightly. "Stolen? How charmingly revisionist." She stepped closer, her weapon unwavering. "Remove your mask. I prefer to see the face of my enemy before I end them." Something in her tone suggested curiosity beyond mere procedure. Nix hesitated, then slowly raised his hands, removing his tactical mask. The cool air touched his face as he revealed himself. Dark eyes, strong jawline, a small scar crossing his left eyebrow. Lyra's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. The weapon in her hand lowered a fraction of an inch as their eyes met without barriers for the first time. Something unspoken passed between them, a recognition, a curiosity, a forbidden interest. "Interesting," she murmured. "You're not what I expected." "Dangerous games. You have exactly 30 seconds to convince me why I shouldn't alert the entire fortress to your presence," Lyra said, her golden eyes never leaving Nix's face. Despite her authoritative tone, she hadn't raised the alarm, a fact not lost on the human infiltrator. Nix maintained steady eye contact, his expression calm, despite the weapon aimed at his chest. "Because you're curious. If you wanted me dead, I'd be dead already." A flicker of amusement crossed Lyra's purple features. She circled him slowly, maintaining distance while studying him with the intensity of a scientist examining a rare specimen. "Perhaps I simply enjoy interrogating prisoners personally. Is that what I am now?" "A prisoner?" Nix asked, his voice low and controlled. "Not an intruder to be executed on sight?" Lyra stopped her circling, standing directly before him. "That depends on what you came for." The air between them seemed charged with electricity, danger, and something else, something neither would acknowledge. Nix felt his heart racing not just from fear, but from the proximity of this alien commander whose reputation for ruthlessness contrasted sharply with the intrigued expression she now wore. "The encryption keys your scouts stole from Terra Nova," he admitted, surprising himself with his honesty. "They're protecting civilian communications, not military intelligence." Lyra's brow furrowed, the luminescent patterns along her temples pulsing with thought. For a moment, indecision flickered across her face. Then, in one swift motion, she lowered her weapon. "Follow me. Make any suspicious move and I'll kill you instantly." She led him through a series of hidden corridors, bypassing the main security channels. Nix memorized each turn, each access panel, filing the intelligence away even as confusion clouded his thoughts. Why was she helping him? What game was she playing? In a secluded chamber lined with crystalline data storage units, Lyra sealed the door and turned to face him. The encryption keys were taken under orders claiming they concealed weapon schematics. She said quietly, "If what you say is true, access the data yourself," Nix challenged. "See what your superiors are really after." Their eyes locked again, a silent battle of trust and suspicion. Finally, Lyra interfaced with the system, her slender fingers dancing across the holographic display as data streamed before her eyes. Her expression hardened as she read, "Communications protocols, evacuation plans, medical supply routes," she murmured. "Nothing military. Your leaders lied to you," Nix said softly. Lyra's jaw tightened.
Why come alone?
"Why not send a strike team?" "Because I didn't want a bloodbath," he replied. "Just the return of what's ours." Something shifted in Lyra's demeanor. Respect, perhaps. Without another word, she extracted a data crystal and placed it in his palm, her fingers lingering against his for a heartbeat longer than necessary. "Take it and go. The south exit will be unguarded for 3 minutes." Nix closed his fingers around the crystal but didn't move. "Why are you helping me?" Lyra stepped closer, the scent of her like rain on hot stones filling his senses. "Perhaps I'm tired of being a weapon pointed at an enemy I've never questioned." Her face was inches from his now, curiosity and forbidden attraction warring in her expression. "Or perhaps," she whispered, "I want to see if you'll come back." Divided loyalties. 2 lunar cycles later, Nick stood before the holographic display in his Spartan quarters at the human outpost, studying the message that had arrived through channels so secure even his superiors weren't aware of them. The encrypted coordinates led to a neutral zone, a desolate moon where neither human nor Azuri patrols ventured. "You're being reckless," warned his AI assistant. Meeting with Commander Vex again could be considered treason. Nick switched off the AI with a flick of his wrist. 3 times now he had met Lyra in secret, each encounter more dangerous than the last. What had begun as an exchange of non-critical intelligence had evolved into something neither of them had anticipated, a fascination that transcended their species' bitter conflict. That evening, as twin suns set over the barren landscape, Nix approached the meeting point with caution. Lyra emerged from the shadows of an ancient ruin, her violet skin almost luminous in the fading light. She wore civilian clothing instead of her military uniform, making her seem both more alien and more approachable. "You came," she said, relief evident in her voice. "Did you doubt I would?" Nick stepped closer, noting the tension in her stance. "What's wrong?" Lyra turned away, her slender fingers tracing patterns in the dust. "The High Command has approved a strike on your outpost at Terra Nova. They believe humans are developing biological weapons targeting our physiology." Nix felt cold dread wash over him. "That's impossible. We've devoted all resources to defensive measures since the last conflict." "I've seen the intelligence reports myself," Lyra countered, turning back to face him. "Intercepted communications, supply manifests for research materials." "Fabricated," Nix insisted, closing the distance between them. "Someone wants this war to escalate." Their eyes met in understanding. They were pawns in a larger game. Lyra's golden gaze softened as she reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the scar across his eyebrow. "I've requested assignment to the strike force," she confessed. "I can delay them, perhaps sabotage the primary weapon systems, but not without exposing myself as a sympathizer." Nix caught her hand, holding it against his cheek. The contrast of her purple skin against his tan complexion was striking. "Come with me. Bring proof of these falsified reports. My commanders will listen." Lyra laughed bitterly. "Your faith in your leaders mirrors what mine once was." She pulled her hand away reluctantly. "If I defect, I lose all ability to help from within." The space between them seemed both vast and microscopic, filled with unspoken desires and impossible choices. When Nix finally spoke, his voice was husky with emotion. "There are other options beyond your military and mine." "Are there?" Lyra challenged, stepping closer until her body nearly touched his. "Where in this galaxy can an Azuri and a human exist together without becoming targets?" Instead of answering, Nix closed the final distance between them. His lips found hers in a kiss that defied decades of hostility between their species. Lyra stiffened momentarily before melting against him, her arms encircling his neck as she responded with equal fervor. When they finally parted, both breathless, the weight of their situation seemed simultaneously heavier and lighter. 3 days. Lyra whispered against his lips. You have 3 days to evacuate Terra Nova. Whatever happens after that. She left the sentence unfinished, pulling away with evident reluctance. Nyx watched her disappear into the gathering darkness, his heart torn between duty to his people and the impossible connection he'd found with an enemy who no longer felt like one. By desperate measures, the evacuation of Terra Nova was disguised as an emergency drill. Only top commanders knew the truth behind Nyx's urgent warning. As the 3rd day dawned, Nyx stood at the observation deck watching the last transport ships disappear into the atmosphere. The intelligence you provided saved thousands of lives, General Reeves said, joining him at the viewport. But the Council remained skeptical of your Azuri source. She risked everything, Nyx replied, his voice tight. Without her warning, an alarm blared, cutting him off. The tactical display flashed red as sensors detected approaching Azuri vessels, arriving 12 hours ahead of schedule. They've accelerated the timeline, Nyx realized with horror. Lyra couldn't warn us. The general's expression hardened. Or your trust was misplaced. Before Nyx could protest, the first bombardment hit. The ground shook violently as defense shields strained under the assault. Nyx raced to the communications array, desperate to establish contact with the Azuri. Fleet. This is Reconnaissance Specialist Nyx Harlow requesting direct communication with Commander Lyra Vex. He transmitted on an open channel. Silence answered him as a second wave of attacks battered the outpost. Then, unexpectedly, a private channel activated. Lyra's face appeared on the screen, her expression a mask of military discipline, but her eyes conveying panic. The operation was advanced without my knowledge, she said, her voice barely audible over the static. You need to... The transmission cut off as an explosion rocked the command center. Specialist Harlow, you're needed at the defensive line, an officer called out. Hours blurred together as Nyx fought alongside the skeleton crew remaining at the outpost. When the Azuri ground forces breached the perimeter, he found himself face to face with elite troops led by a senior commander, not Lyra. Surrender and you may be granted the mercy of quick execution, the commander announced. Exhausted and outnumbered, the humans laid down their weapons. As they were rounded up, Nyx scanned desperately for any sign of Lyra among the Azuri forces. Instead, he caught sight of a familiar insignia on one of the transport ships, Lyra's personal command vessel. The prisoners were separated for interrogation. Nyx was led to a holding cell deep within what had once been the human command center. Hours passed before the door finally opened, revealing not his expected interrogator but Lyra herself, her expression carefully neutral for the benefit of the surveillance cameras. This prisoner possesses critical intelligence, she announced to the guards. I will conduct this interrogation personally, once alone. She quickly disabled the monitoring systems and turned to Nyx, dropping her military facade. I had no knowledge of the accelerated timeline, she whispered urgently. High Command suspected a leak and compartmentalized the final orders. Nyx moved closer, noticing a faint bruise on her temple. You're injured. I questioned the change in plans too aggressively, she explained, her fingers briefly touching the mark. I've been reassigned to prisoner processing, a demotion disguised as a special assignment. The evacuation was nearly complete, Nyx told her. Most of our people escaped. Relief flooded her features before urgency returned. You won't survive the interrogation protocols. The questions are merely formality before execution. Nyx understood the implications immediately. You have a plan. Lyra nodded, pressing a small device into his palm. A shield disruptor. When the transport leaves for the Azuri detention center, activate it. The resulting malfunction will provide a distraction for your escape. Come with me, Nyx urged, grasping her hand. They already suspect you. It's only a matter of time before... If we both disappear, they'll hunt us relentlessly, she interrupted, though her fingers intertwined with his. I need to remain to direct them away from your escape route. The sound of approaching guards forced them apart. Lyra quickly reactivated the monitoring systems and adopted her commander persona once more. Your cooperation will be noted in the final report, she said loudly, moving toward the door. Their eyes met one last time. volumes of unspoken emotion passing between them before she departed, leaving Nyx alone with a desperate plan and the weight of what she was sacrificing for him. New Horizons. The shield disruptor worked exactly as Lyra had promised, causing a cascade failure that threw the prisoner transport into chaos. In the confusion, Nyx slipped away, commandeering an emergency shuttle and vanishing into the asteroid belt that ringed the Terra Nova system. But Freedom felt hollow knowing Lyra remained behind, vulnerable to suspicion. For 3 weeks, Nyx moved between shadowy outposts on the fringes of controlled space, exchanging his skills for supplies and information. Each communication intercept he managed to decode brought increasingly disturbing news. Lyra had been arrested for treason, her trial expedited to make an example of her. The message that finally drove him to action came from an anonymous source within Azuri territory. Commander Vex, execution scheduled. Galaran prison. Final cycle of the Red Moon. 2 days. He had 2 days to attempt the impossible, infiltrating the most secure Azuri prison in the quadrant. Alone, the mission would be suicide, but Nyx had spent his weeks in exile making connections with others who existed in the margins between the warring species. "You understand this is madness," said Kira, a half-human smuggler whose ship currently harbored Nyx. Her navigator, an Azuri exile named Thorn, nodded in agreement. "The security protocols at Galaran are impenetrable," Thorn added, his purple skin paler than most Azuri. "And for what? One Azuri commander? She's the reason any of the colonists survived," Nyx replied quietly. "And she's more than just a commander to me." Understanding dawned in their eyes. Kira and Thorn exchanged glances. They recognized the look of someone willing to defy an entire galaxy for love. "We might know someone who can help," Kira finally said. That someone turned out to be a collective of interspecies couples and hybrids living secretly on an abandoned mining moon. Their settlement, hidden beneath the surface, represented everything both human and Azuri governments denied could exist: harmony between the species. "The prison rotation changes during the ceremonial execution preparation," explained Mira, an Azuri woman whose human partner operated the settlement's security. "There's a 3-minute window when the quantum locks recalibrate." Armed with detailed schematics and access codes provided by the settlement's network of informants, Nyx launched his rescue mission. The infiltration went perfectly until the very moment he reached Lyra's cell, only to find her barely conscious, her body weakened from interrogation techniques. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered as he worked to free her restraints. "They'll kill you." "They can try," he responded, lifting her gently. "But I'm not leaving without you." The alarm sounded just as they reached the maintenance shaft that would lead them to the extraction point. Guards flooded the corridors, cutting off their planned escape route. Trapped and outnumbered, Nyx prepared for a final stand. Unexpectedly, a secondary explosion rocked the far side of the facility, a diversion Nyx hadn't planned. His communicator crackled to life. "Path cleared to southern docking bay," came Kira's voice. "Don't waste it." With Lyra leaning heavily against him, Nyx raced through suddenly empty corridors, reaching the smuggler's ship just as the facility's backup systems came online. They lifted off under heavy fire, shields straining against the barrage until a jump to hyperspace finally carried them to safety. Days later, as Lyra recovered in the medical bay of the hidden settlement, Nyx sat beside her, their fingers intertwined. "They call this place New Beginning," he told her. "Refugees from both sides living together, proving what our leaders insist is impossible." Lyra gazed around at the remarkable community, human and Azuri children playing together, couples of mixed species working side by side to maintain the settlement's systems. "All my life I was taught humans were the enemy," she said softly, "that our species were fundamentally incompatible." "A convenient lie to maintain power," Nyx suggested. "Fear is easier to control than understanding." Lyra's golden eyes met his, her purple fingers tightening around his hand. "What happens now? We can't stay hidden forever. Both sides will be hunting us." Nyx smiled, bringing her hand to his lips. "Perhaps we're not meant to hide." The settlement leaders have been gathering evidence of cooperation between corrupt officials on both sides, proof that the conflict is being artificially prolonged for profit. "You want to expose them?" Lyra asked, surprise evident in her voice. "I want to fight for a future where we don't have to choose between our people and each other," Nyx replied. where no one does. The settlement's artificial sunlight streamed through the window, bathing them in a warm glow. Outside, human and Azuri voices mingled in conversation and laughter, evidence of what was possible when hatred gave way to understanding. Lyra pulled him closer, her lips meeting his in a kiss that held both passion and promise. When they parted, her expression was determined. "Then we fight," she said simply. "Together." In that moment, surrounded by others who had made the same choice, Nyx and Lyra found something neither had truly believed possible. Hope for a future where the boundaries between their species might dissolve, creating something new and beautiful from the ashes of conflict. Not an ending, but a beginning. A horizon filled with possibilities neither had dared imagine until they found each other across the divide of stars and prejudice.